Hello friends, Reckless Tempest Top 16 Seasonal Spy here. Today we're going to be using Lor-Meta Report's meta tier list to go over what decks we should be playing for ladder to get that speed LP, and we're going to use their archetype analysis tool to find the best decks of each archetype that we should be using. Links to the meta tier list and deck codes are in the description. So as we can see in tier S, we have Zed Vanier at number 1 with a meta score of 84.5. Pretty high win rate, 56. Not like problematic, but very respectable, decent play rate. Followed by Pantheon Vayne at a 78 meta score. And behind that, we have Vayne Gwen at 75 meta score. But only a 50% win rate, so this is more being carried by it has good matchups against other decks that are popular necessarily than it having necessarily a very high win rate. And oh wow, another Vayne deck, but with a Rumble at a 75. So basically, like, these are all more or less the same thing, and Zed Vayne is number 1. And honestly, all these decks are more or less, you put a unit into play, and you play Tumble, and you target the unit, and you profit. And the decks, some of them have some alternate plans to win. Rumble isn't one of them, though. That's not Rumble. In the A tier, we have Janny at 70, still holding a respectable win rate of 54, probably griefing on all those Seraphine players that are just trying to durdle and gain value and play back alley bar, and it's just like throwing stuff at them. Akshan Varus at 60. This is basically, instead of playing Lee Sin, right, they're playing Varus, and they work really well together since Varus wants to play cultist spells and pump spells, and Akshan also does that really well. Momentous Moment being an obscene card in this deck. Ezreal Seraphine Noxus. This is basically just, it's like a combination of Ezreal Draven Tribeam and Ezreal Karma. But Draven's been kicked out for Seraphine, and same with Karma, because Seraphine is like a mini Karma when it comes to duplicating new spells, so you get a lot of removal value out of it. And Victor Seraphine SI, another Seraphine deck at 56. Reasonable win rate of 54. Just again, this is more of a Durdle value deck. Victor Seraphine Ionia. Sorry, I have Shadow Elves and Ionia mixed up. A bit of a Ionia supremacist, but they're both Durdle piles with Piltover cards, and then the other region either helps them Durdle in a different way, right? Ionia stuff will bounce and stun, Shadow Elf stuff will kill. Oh wow, another Vayne Jack stack, way down here, bottom of A tier, 52 score, reasonable win rate. This is basically exactly what it sounds like. You play Vayne, you play Jax, you play a lot of weapons and improvising units, and then you just tumble or you just attack, right? It's a pretty fair deck. And lastly, Twisted Fate Swain, just good old fashioned Noxus Bilgewater midrange. If you found value in this so far, I'd really appreciate it if you momentous choice that like button. Yours costs 0, and it helps push this content to other people. And if you want more card game goodness, Golden Aegis, that subscribe button. The first deck we're going to look at is Zed Vayne. Pretty much just, essentially this is actually very similar to Zed Lulu, but instead it's playing Vayne instead of Lulu. And we still have some elusive threats, we have some challengers, and we have the classic tricks to keep Zed safe and attacking. Not really a whole lot like new and innovative here, except maybe like Darken Aegis on Broadwing's kind of cool. It's pretty efficient. And another Demacia champion being replaced. This was more or less Pantheon Fiora a week ago, and now she's been kicked to the curb for the new Monster Hunter in town. And we're playing a Blood Cursed Harpy instead of Cam 4. Took me a minute to remember that card's name, which is fine. I think the Expanse's Protection, this gives Spell Shield, really good. It costs 2 if you've equipped an ally this game. And yeah, basically pretty basic, honest. Not a whole lot going on here. Again, Darken Aegis, very strong card though. You already have another Vayne deck, but this one has Gwen. The highest win rate one I could find didn't run Opulent Foyer, which is the landmark that makes a Ghostly Band. Personally, I prefer that version a lot more. It's probably just because I think it's a lot cooler. But yeah, this deck's goal is it has a lot of cheap units and value, interaction, and then eventually it's gonna tumble targeting Gwen or Eternal Dancers and get like a lot of big value. And it has a backup plan with a big Harrowing that can just refill the board with a lot of murder death. And surprisingly, this deck actually has a good amount of interaction between the Vial Feast, Quietus, Cataclysm, and Concerted Strike. Honestly, I think people are underplaying Quietus. This is one of the few removal spells in the game that's actually mana efficient most of the time at removing its threats. So, yeah. The fourth deck is Vayne Rumble. So the cool thing about Great Hammers in this deck is Tumble lets you attach an equipment that costs 2 or less from your hand onto the thing you're tumbling. So this way, it's a cheap way to give Rumble Overwhelm. Also, Legendary Choice is a tutor for Rumble, since it's the only 5-powered unit in the deck. We're essentially running 6 copies. And this deck is just basically full of some cheap efficient extra attack effects like Rune Reckoner, Rally, and with the addition of Rune Squire, it's loading up on the Reforged package. So it can also, so every once in a while it might make the Super Blade, but more often than not it's making discard fodder for Rumble. This deck is a little light on it, but it's worth it since once you give this guy quick attack and spell shield and take a ton of extra attacks, you know, you're gonna wrap up the game. Here we have a classic Janny. Not a whole lot to say here other than the highest win rate version with a 56% win rate played Decimates. The second version that had a 54% win rate played Sigil of Malice. I'd recommend you play Decimate. Don't play Bad Mystic Shot, just play slightly worse Decimate if you want to burn people out. Akshan Varus, new deck. Basically with Varus, what you want to do is this champion wants you to target things with Momentous Choice and a lot of these effects to level him up and power up the Darkened Bow for a one-shot kill. This version is currently not running the Curse card that makes things take double damage, and the way it interacts with Overwhelm is it's quadruple damage, essentially. But yeah, it's just got very efficient cultist spells, which are what you want to cast to auto-draw Varus, and I picked the list. If I recall correctly, the win rates were kind of middling, but I picked the one with the Unforgiven Cold because I saw one pro was saying like this card's busted and Varus you should play 3, so that's why I picked this one, and that's why I'm telling you about it. This is a recent meta spike. This is Seraphine Ezreal, but with Noxus instead of whatever Dodal region, and essentially, as I said earlier in the video, this is more of a tri-beam, kind of like classic Noxus PNZ removal, but because of these new PNZ cards and the enablement of them from Seraphine, we can actually grind a metric ton of free stuff. So this deck doesn't run out of fuel anywhere near as much as necessarily those decks did back in the past. Seraphine Victor, this is just essentially another, I guess this is the first Piltover Dirtle value pile since the previous one, though it did have some dirtly stuff with Song Spinner and Drum Solo. Didn't run Back Alley Bar, this one does. And the whole point of this deck obviously is just to play a crap ton of value, stall for time, and then just get a metric ton of card advantage and eventually bury your opponents in them. And I think this is probably a very good direction to go, again, because I think Quietus is a kind of messed up card, honestly. So, and by I think it's really good because Quietus is plus tempo a lot of the time, and it's kind of like a trade, right? Like you spend some of your mana to turtle and gain card advantage and trade board space and presence and exchange, and then you play Quietus to get a little bit of that back, right? Here we have the Ionia version of that. Disciple, very good. I don't know how to say the first part of the card, but the wind spell can get doubled with Seraphine, it can get reduced with Victor, and Back Alley Bar, it's just, you know, a very clean effect. Also with Ionia Tellstones, a very funny thing is Stand United combined with Elusives lets your giant Victors just weasel in for lethal. So it even has late game win condition applications, which I'm a big fan of. I am releasing a video a video of a deck similar to this, but it's Master Yi instead of Seraphine, because I think Master Yi is also really good. I think cost reduction is kind of broken. So I'm just trying to experiment in that direction, and there's going to be a ton of Seraphine decks out there, which, you know, there are. So I didn't really feel the need to go too hard on that. Card is up here if you want to watch that. Jack's Vayne is actually kind of a unique deck, I'd say, for this patch, even though, like, not necessarily super innovative. You could say this is very similar to Concurrent Timelines, but it got a lot of new toys with the Vayne package, and it's weirdly not even super big into being a Vayne deck. It's more of a Jax deck, and Vayne's just like, hey, I'm here. I can make something big, attack a few more times, and it's like if anything, the second effect of Tumble attaching for free is more important here than the extra attack, right? This deck's not overloaded with say scouts or hollowed, or it has a murder shadow ninja that's making copies of itself when it attacks, or eternal dancers, right? It's just it's honestly like an evolution of elites, I'd say. It's just good fair board stuff taken to the next level. Good old faithful Twisted Fate Swain, still a viable deck, right? Swain got that upgrade, so he has overwhelm when he levels up, and he can blow up your opponents for a crap ton of damage. And Leviathan, Riptide Rex, right? We're seeing more of a split of that now because they both don't cost the same amount of mana anymore. Leviathan was nerfed down to 7, or buffed down to 7 mana, so instead of having the 3-1 split, you can just go 2-2, and it's a lot smoother on your mana curve. I like the addition of heavy metal. Personally, I would like to maybe see a third. I notice a lot of people are playing equipments nowadays, and just having a bad mystic shot that also kills something of equal value seems really good to me. So that's the end of the meta report. Again, if you like this, you made it this far, please heavy metal that like button, and that subscribe button if you want more card game goodness. And there's gonna be videos for you to click. I'd recommend the Master Yi Seraphine one. Those games were super fun, and I'll see you next week, maybe on Wednesday, for another report.